In Thursday's red and blue political roundup, both sides are pointing fingers after the U.S. summit with North Korea came to an abrupt halt. The president claimed Kim Jong-un was asking for too much and wanted all sanctions lifted in exchange for dismantling some of his nuclear weapons program. That was a deal breaker for Mr. Trump.
Basically, they wanted the sanctions lifted in their entirety, and we couldn't do that. They were willing to denuke a large portion of the areas that we wanted, but we couldn't give up all of the sanctions for that. So we continue to work, and we'll see, but we had to walk away from that particular suggestion. We had to walk away from that.
But North Korean officials offered a contradictory explanation Thursday. In a press conference, the country's foreign minister said Kim's regime only asked for partial sanctions relief. For more on this, Molly Hooper joins me now from Washington. She's a CBSN political contributor and reporter for The Hill. Hi, Molly. Always great to have you with us.
Wonderful to be here.
So after the summit came to this abrupt halt, North Korean's foreign minister said, quote, "This kind of opportunity may never come again." What kind of pressure is the president facing now?
Well, I mean, if I talk to lawmakers, and I do talk to lawmakers, I should say, this opportunity doesn't come again necessarily for the North Koreans. Remember, one thing that I heard across the board today on Capitol Hill from Republicans and Democrats, which was surprising, was that, that they were glad President Trump did not take this deal and potentially give away economic sanctions that have been keeping North Korea in line in exchange for, less stringent nuclear denuclearization protocols. And that was one thing that some Republicans and a few Democrats I talked to feared going into this, that the president seemed so energetic and excited about having a deal when really, the U.S. has been to this point in the past with North Korean negotiations, and the North Koreans don't come to the table and actually denuclearize. Right. And the worry was that the president would give away economic sanctions. And he didn't. And that's why I heard from Democrats who said, this is Angus King, who's actually an independent from Maine, but he caucuses with Democrats, that the president did the right thing, and that I hope that he stays on that course. The one concern, however, is what happens now.
Right. How
will the president react now that he's getting this feedback and hearing from the North Koreans what they're saying publicly? Will the president revert to Little Rocket Man rhetoric and potentially blow things up rhetorically, or will he stay the course and continue working with the North Koreans and maintain that seemingly good, positive relationship with the North Korean dictator and take steps to move forward?
I'm glad that you brought up sort of the lawmakers' response to this and how it has seemed to be somewhat cohesive. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi weighed in on the summit's conclusion, and here's part of what she said. Let's listen.
He was a big winner, Kim Jong-un, in getting to sit face-to-face with the most powerful person in the world, the President of the United States. And really, it's good that the President did not give him anything for the little that he was proposing.
So just to reiterate, it seems what you've been saying, that there's a consensus on Capitol Hill about this summit and perhaps how to move forward after this?
Well, there is. And, I was talking to several Republicans, one of which, Steve Chabot, on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He said, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Reagan at Reykjavik. In 1986, when then-President Reagan walked away from the table, again, a nuclear arms deal that could have been very, very lucrative for the United States, but the president said, I'm not going to give up our ability to have a ballistic missile defense program for, the Soviets not fully disarming their nuclear weapons. And he walked away. And so I've heard that from several Republicans who said this could be reminiscent of what happened back in 1986. And keep in mind, after that moment when President Reagan walked away, eventually a deal was made. So this isn't the end of things. That's what I heard. This is not the end of things. But President Trump needs to be very mindful of how he moves forward, because given President Kim's unpredictable responses and the president's unpredictable responses, you know, it could go okay, or it could not, or it could just not go at all.
Right. Now, Molly, sticking with foreign policy, the Trump administration announced Wednesday the U.S. is abandoning the threat to raise tariffs on billions of Chinese goods. Could this be a sign that a trade deal is nearing?
Actually, that's kind of interesting. I was talking to Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal, who actually had a hearing yesterday. There were a lot of things happening up on the Hill yesterday.
Busy day.
Yeah, busy, in addition to Cohen testifying. Right. But no, he had a hearing with the U.S. Trade Representative, Bob Lighthizer, and was actually came away from that hearing with a positive, with 2 thumbs up, he said, saying Lighthizer's doing a good job, he's taking the right steps, and potentially a deal with China could be in the offing. And again, this is something that I've heard from other Democrats. Nancy Pelosi also says that Lighthizer is doing a great job, which is kind of surprising given all the critiques that have been leveled at Trump administration officials. The one who is getting praise from Democrats is the U.S. Trade Representative. So potentially there could be a deal forthcoming. And keep in mind, China plays a big role in how North Korea behaves, because China is the one who's essentially enforcing those sanctions, and that's very important. So having a deal with China is important, and I hear that from both Republicans.
In some ways,
and
China is the elephant in the room in that summit, right?
Exactly.
And of course, as you mentioned, as all this was happening, the president's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, gave his 3rd and final day of testimony to Congress Thursday. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff spoke to reporters afterwards, and let's listen to what he said.
You know, this has obviously been an excruciating time for him, and we're very grateful that he was as forthcoming as he was. We made the same admonishment that my colleague Chairman Cummings made so eloquently, much more eloquently than I, that he needed to tell us the full truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. None of the questions we had for him went unanswered.
So, Molly, can we expect to hear anything more in the coming days about Cohen's testimony?
Well, he's expected to be up on the Hill next week. Again, back to the House Intelligence Committee, Jackie Speer told reporters after the closed-door hearing that Cohen, they probably got maybe a quarter of the way through the questions for Cohen, specifically on, you know, the House and Senate Intelligence Committees are following up on the role that the Trump Organization played in trying to set up a Trump hotel in Moscow during the 2016 election, at which time the president essentially said, no, I wasn't pursuing it then. But Cohen, as he revealed in the hearing on Wednesday, Cohen said that no, you know, we were doing that up until June 2016. At that point, the president then the candidate was the presumptive GOP nominee. And so that is one line of inquiry that the Intel committees are pursuing and following up with Cohen. Another potential hearings that we could see in the Oversight Committee, the more open public hearings, could fall along the lines of tax fraud, insurance fraud, following up with Al Weisselberg and David Pecker, you know, based on things that Michael Cohen said before the committee, in that they had such a role in all the financial transactions that could lead to some of these issues like insurance fraud and tax fraud.
Right.
They could be in front of the committee. Mm-hmm.
And apparently Weisselberger is going to be called to testify. That's the latest.
Yeah,
are you hearing the same thing?
I'm hearing the same thing, and I've heard that Ivanka may be on the list and her brother Donald Jr. So, you know, when I was asking Republicans and Democrats, what was the purpose of that yesterday? Because given, you know, both Republicans and Democrats were saying, yeah, he lied. Michael Cohen admitted he lied, and having him in front of Congress, well, that could raise questions. But essentially what it does is it opens avenues to pursue in the future. So they don't necessarily take what he said at face value, but they're going to follow up on the allegations that he's leveling. And he leveled a lot yesterday.
There was a lot to follow up on, for sure.
Yes, for sure.
And Democrats will, I'm certain, follow up on all of them. Now, speaking of the Democrats, they're also reportedly weighing if they should change the rules necessary for a procedural vote. Can you tell us what this would entail and explain why it's significant?
Okay, I cover the House, and I got to tell you, in the House of Representatives, there's not a lot of opportunities for the minority party to offer an amendment to a bill. So when the House takes up a bill on the floor, there's a Rules Committee that decides which amendments get to be offered, and you know, the chamber will vote on. And that committee decides basically how everything's going to be transacted on the floor. The one opportunity members have in the minority party is to offer what they call a motion to recommit. And usually it's an amendment. It would be an amendment that you would make to the bill. Well, Republicans, and this has happened in this Congress, in the last Congress that they were in the minority, they have perfected the art of the motion to recommit. And normally it's a procedural vote, but they do it to trip up, you know, vulnerable Democrats because essentially as they did the other day, and what's causing so much problems, there was a gun background check bill, this important legislation that Democrats have been pushing since, you know, before they were even elected. The Republicans come along, they sneak in this motion to recommit that says, you know, I believe it was, authorities must be notified if undocumented individuals try to get a gun. Okay, so you have your moderate Democrats who vote for that, it gets onto the bill, but guess what? Then all the Democrats who are voting for that bill, you know, your progressives and whatnot, all of a sudden they're hit with, you know, this amendment that essentially, you know, puts them on the same side as President Trump. It's very divisive.
Right.
But, right. So the challenge that Democratic leaders have is how to keep their vulnerable Democratic members from voting on that Republican amendment. And, you know, Democrats, when they were in the minority, they had the same opportunity. And so this is one of those situations where it's more of a fairness issue and a reminder that, guess what, we're not always going to be in the majority.
Right.
And we're going to want to have this opportunity as well. So really, you know, Democratic leaders said they didn't see it coming, but come on. Republicans have been doing this for years. And it's the one thing that I looked forward to when the Republicans were in the minority because, oh my gosh, some of these motion to recommits are great.
And Nancy Pelosi apparently had a few words with Democrats behind closed doors about all of this, didn't she?
Oh, she did. And what was interesting, though, is you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who's urging her moderate Democratic members not to vote for these procedural amendments.
Right.
But these vulnerable Democrats represent districts that are purple, and they have to get reelected as well. And so, you know, the Republicans put those lawmakers, you know, on the record saying that they supported something that a majority of probably of the people in their district would support, or they didn't. And Republicans, they follow that as well, and they're really quick to put up ads in districts saying that your Democratic lawmaker voted against requiring undocumented individuals to be notified, you know, authorities to be notified that they tried to purchase a gun.
Oh, yeah, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, for sure. Molly Hooper, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.